This is Monocle on Fashion, a show on Monocle Radio offering global perspectives and nuanced conversation on the worlds of fashion and style. I'm Natalie Theodosi, your host and Monocle's fashion director. As we head towards Christmas, we wanted to look back at the year in fashion, revisit some of our favorite interviews, including the discussions we had around this year's fashion weeks. Fashion weeks in 2025 were probably more eventful than any other year in modern fashion history, given the sheer amount of hirings and firings taking place in design studios in Milan and Paris, and the pressure for the new generation of creative directors to deliver. In this episode, we'll look back at editors' reactions to Jonathan Anderson's new vision for Dior and Michael Ryder's reworking of Celine.
Preppiness done right, where it's not obnoxious and it actually feels evocative and cool.
Remember what a foreign correspondent had to say about the Spring-Summer 2026 shows.
This looks a bit like an extremely upscale take on the kind of thing they put on horses to get them into the barriers when they don't want to go.
Plus, revisit our Paris Fashion Week chat with Sarah Andelman on the joy of bringing back her famous boutique, Colette.
I've met some young kids who heard a lot about Colette and never had the chance to come, so it gives them a little
taste.
Voilà, exactly.
This and more on Monocle on Fashion. So Lily, you're back. Now this time we're talking about fashion weeks, which are always quite interesting to record and produce for both of us, because I'm usually down the line, there's noise, I haven't slept and my voice sounds crazy, so I'm sure it's not as fun for you.
And I'm trying to fashion week episodes between fashion shows. But I think for me, I wanted to include your interview with Sarah Andelman for this, because it was probably one of the real high points for a lot of the fashion community, right, in Paris during Paris Fashion Week was the return of Colette, this beloved concept store that closed in 2017. Why do you think Colette still remains so well kind of entrenched in everyone's memory and still thought of so fondly?
I think because there has been nothing like it since. Everyone would make like pilgrimages to Colette if they were in Paris, or even if you lived in Paris, you had locals there, you had all the designers taking their meetings at the water bar, and she really just broke all the rules of retail. She did the most amazing collaborations. So it was such a loss, but also an important lesson that it's important sometimes to live on a high. And the only reason that Sarah brought it back, it was to make it part of this exhibition about the late Virgil Abloh, who she was one of the first people to champion, and he became a dear friend. So I was really happy to be able to talk to her about that. And, you know, Fashion Week can be so crazy. It's all about who sits on the front row, the shows, but this felt a bit more meaningful. And I managed to literally pull her away into a staircase in the Grand Palais, away from the noise of the pop-up, and to get her to talk to us about making the project happen and her take on Paris Fashion Week. So a really special moment, definitely.
So let's hear it from the founder of Colette, Sarah Andelman.
When the team from Virgil Abloh Archives informed me about their project, even if it was last minute just before summer, and said we would love to have you involved for the retail part. It's true, I didn't think twice. I said, yes, of course, you can count on me, because Virgil was so important in our history, and I have so much admiration for everything he did that I thought it was a good opportunity, flashback just for 10 days, just in this context of the Grand Palais to do it. So there is no rules, and it's fun to see, to work again with the same team and to try to give a little of the same way. I think the exhibition informed about who was Virgil for the younger ones. I've met some young kids who heard a lot about Colette and never had the chance to come, so it gives them, we cannot say the same thing at all, but it gives them a little
taste.
Voilà, exactly.
And is that really a one-off? I have to ask you selfishly.
No, of course, no. Especially it reminds me also what it is, how It is, so no, it's definitely...
Yeah. And it's interesting you said they contacted you in the summer and it was quite a last minute project, because just walking through now, it felt like something that's so well thought and that it must have taken a long time. I was in my mind, but what was the process like these few months of putting it together, working with the foundation?
So of course I speak only about the shop, but first I went through what was left from Virgil alive. So there is his own label, Canary Yellow, where he was producing his own T-shirts, stickers, keychains. So they had dead stock of this that we put in priority. Then checking which collaboration he did was still available. So for example, there is Alessi that we have, some books, of course. Then we decided to do T-shirts, as he would have done, of kind of merch souvenir, but also collaboration with all the partners, the artists he worked with, where it goes from Art of l'Automobile, who is in Paris as well, to Stray Rats, to Babylon. So all these friends from Virgil accepted to do a design for a T-shirt. And then it's a mix of some, little mini goodies and some skateboard, because I think Virgil was like the skate community. We have some music speakers. We try to represent his world, the diversity of his world.
Yeah, and that idea of the mix of bringing books and magazines and merch and also maybe more high-end product has always been at the heart of Colette, at the heart of what Virgil was doing. Why do you think it appeals so much to people? It was important to have the mix again in this show.
No, but for me it's very organic, and I think yes, there is the Assoline book on Louis Vuitton limited edition, which is 1,200 euro, to a little pen, which is 3 euro. But I consider these products all relevant, and I think maybe people will understand that I think if you cannot afford an expensive print on book, at least you have the pleasure to see it, to enjoy it, to know more about where it's coming from, what the story behind. But for me, all these products, I always compare to a puzzle, and I think it's important to have multiple choice, multiple origins of products. And I think you are right, Virgil was thinking that way too, and I didn't want to limit the proposal to only one category of products.
And having kind of went back through all the collaborations, Virgil's initial work, did it give you any new perspectives now that time has passed about what made him so special and just generally the impact of his work? Because it's always good to look back, no?
Yes, but what I love, for example, we did a wall painted by artists to make. It's organized by Hugo Vitrani, who is a curator at Palais de Tokyo, and he had this project of exhibition with Virgil, and he worked a lot with Futura, and it was fun to have them do this last-minute action. And I think Virgil was like, this, let's do it. And there was one of the artists I asked, so you worked a lot with Virgil? He said, yes, we did a collaboration for Off-White, for Louis Vuitton. So I said, you must know his team, who worked with him also forever. I said, no, actually, we were just doing WhatsApp. I will send him. And this is so Virgil. I mean, and I think big company nowadays, everything is so formalized, everything is so official, that he was like a sun with lots of stars, reaching to open a conversation with so many different people and giving them a chance, giving them the occasion to push a door and do some things that would have been more difficult without his support. So I think this, I still feel it. I knew, but I still feel it very strong during this experience.
That was Sarah Andelman speaking to me at the Grand Palais during Paris Fashion Week. Next, we want to look at Men's Fashion Week, which took place last June, and we got Dan Thawley to come to our studio. He's a great journalist. He's also the artistic director of a design salon, Matter and Shape, so he sees things from quite an artistic perspective, I think. And straight after the Dior show, which was Jonathan Anderson's first, we got to grab him and get his initial take, which I always think is interesting to get people's first take. But before we hear Dan, what did you think, Lily? What's your take on Jonathan Anderson's Dior? It's quite a divisive topic.
I thought he did a great job. I didn't think it was like totally groundbreaking, perhaps, but I think Dior has been quite commercial for quite a few years, and that's done great things for it business-wise, but it was definitely time for a new chapter, and I think he did a good job. What did you think?
I had mixed feelings as well, where you talk about not being groundbreaking, and my immediate reaction wasn't one of excitement, kind of like that gut reaction that you get to some shows or to anything.
Yeah, maybe my bar is way too low. Yeah. I was like, it's nice.
There's also that. But I do think that the menswear is stronger, actually. That was the very first show before he kind of developed it even further in September for women's. And there was a little bit more humor, and his idea of prep is quite interesting. So it's early days, and I hope that we are going to get really, really excited in 2026. But let's hear what Dan has to say about Dior and all the craziness of Paris Fashion Week.
Much of the discourse around fashion is really talking about the battles between the large groups. And that's not really what the whole industry, and menswear in particular, does not work like that. I think menswear is something that has a lot of great offline channels. There are people that are very loyal to certain brands. There are people that shop with great loyalty to certain tailoring houses, to casual houses. Of course, I think there's also been a big trend away from sort of general streetwear. And so I think it's interesting and somewhat positive to see the needle sort of moving back towards a sort of softer, casual way of dressing, with still tenets of formality and archetypes of masculine dressing. But I think we've hopefully moved a bit further away from too much of this futuristic, technical kind of dressing. And if you wanted to mention specifically Grace Wells Bonner, her returning to the runway now off the back of her huge implication in the Met Gala, and more specifically in the Costume Institute's Superfine Black Tailoring exhibition, it was interesting to see her riffing off of all of that research she'd been doing for that show, centered on the black dandy and fashion at the Costume Institute at the Met in New York, and sort of channeling that into a full collection. So we saw her presentation at the Lycée Henri IV 2 afternoons ago, and she really continued her sort of Afro-Atlantic storytelling about also British tailoring and working with traditional British makers like John Smedley Knitwear and Anderson and Shepherd Tailors to work on her more elevated pieces, and then also her continuing her very, very successful collaboration with Adidas, and including that into the runway, working with her stylist Tom Guinness to knit all those stories together. As always, worked with a lot of storytelling about black figures from the past that have influenced her, literary figures. She's always a highlight, I think, for me, and I think this show was particularly strong in its proposition of very versatile and sort of elevated, simple clothes.
And I think you put it exactly right, that she finds a way to really balance world building and things that are extremely tailored and beautiful, but there's also pragmatism. And it seems like there is a wave of new brands that manage to strike this fine balance and to create a community of customers that are really obsessive about their stories, but also the quality. They want to know more about fabric. I find that when I went to the Orally show, and then the Japanese brands are really resonating with customers because of that. Do you find that this is much more of a priority for the menswear customers, or for this new kind of wave of menswear customers?
I think the simple fact is that we've been buying clothes for a long time now, and there's been a lot of fashion shows and a lot of propositions, and menswear has a center of gravity that doesn't really waver as much as women's. You're not really experimenting as much with dramatic silhouettes and embroideries and fabrications and things like that. So we do need to start digging into those more subtle details that someone who's going to also spend a certain amount of money on a piece is going to be curious about. And that may not mean that person is an expert in what they're seeing, but I think we're at a time where, okay, people are still buying ready-to-wear and luxury clothing and handmade things, and those people may want to know that it is light, that it is comfortable, that it is sourced from a maker or a mill that has certain certification or that is doing things with purpose. And I think Aurélie is an interesting example of that. It's not reinventing the wheel by any means, and it's also not a brand with enormous storytelling. In fact, it's kind of a bit of an anti-storytelling brand, in my opinion. It's about the garments very, very purely. This show had beautiful women's swimwear styles, but that were actually knit, and the designer was sort of laughing backstage saying maybe you shouldn't go swimming in those. I think that brand is getting a lot of interest at the moment, also through the collaboration with the stylist Charlotte Collet, who does a really beautiful job. And I think the combination between a strong designer and a stylist in menswear is something that has really continued to push certain designers forward in the last few years. It's been very important when menswear essentially is very much about product. That image comes very much through the way some of those things are styled.
That was Dan Thorley, editor, journalist and artistic director of the design salon Matter and Shape. And now we're going to turn to London Fashion Week for one of my favourite interviews, probably one of the biggest characters we've had, I think, on the show. And
she's someone that you discovered, you brought to the studio, and I'm very grateful because she's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, fantastic. So this is Sarah Blonstein, the founder of events company Blonstein Productions. And she's been working in events for over 30 years. She got her start with a night called Pussy Posse, which was an inclusive, woman-focused club night. And that was back in the 90s. So she's always been very forward-thinking. And then she pivoted into fashion and has since become one of the most important producers at London Fashion Week. She does every show from Roxanda to the New Gen shows for up-and-coming designers. And so it was really brilliant to hear her thoughts on how the industry has changed, how London Fashion Week has changed over the years, but also how in many ways it has stayed the same.
Yeah, no, I loved her. I mean, to set the scene a little bit, she has bright blue hair. She calls everybody darling. She was asking us if she can swear in the show, which I loved. And like you say, yeah, she's been such a pioneer for 30 years and she's still producing shows for the new gen and the young designers of London, also people like Roxanda, who's now a lot more established here. And it was just refreshing to hear someone who was optimistic, I think, about what's going on in London. There's a lot of doom and gloom conversations, but I think we needed some fresh energy.
Yeah, I think here there is often a narrative that London is a bit over. It's not as exciting as it used to be. The fashion scene isn't as exciting as it used to be. But she definitely does not prescribe to that at all, and really had a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of passion for all the different designers she works for, and was very, very clear that no, London is still as creative and forward-thinking as it always was.
It definitely is. Let's hear from Sarah Blonstein.
We used to take maybe a lot more risks with regard to, health and safety's gone a bit crazy. And we used to start shows very late, which you're not allowed to do anymore. I remember we did a show under London Bridge. And these spaces don't exist anymore. There's now very boring shops like WH Smith under there. But at the time, there were these fantastic tunnels and there was like a hidden door in London Bridge and there were people trying to get in and we were terribly late. I think we were an hour late, which we would never be now, by the way.
Unless you're waiting for Beyonce or someone. That's the only time they're allowed to do it, I think.
Maybe. But people have got very sensitive to it, much more. But and I remember there were people trying to get into this beautiful venue, and I remember someone from the BFC, you got to start. And then it was like the Night of the Living Dead of hands trying to, as we shut the door, of hands trying to get in. So it was very different in those days. But it's it swings and roundabouts, really. That was when we were doing individual shows, which we still do occasionally. But now, since working for the British Fashion Council, we do the multi-venue show where many designers can show in one venue. Originally, that was a mixture of new gen and other designers. Now it's just new gen since the pandemic. So it's a slightly smaller operation, but probably more niche. And we also bring in alumni, people who were New Gen. So, for example, SS Daily showed last season in our show space, and Ashish is coming back this season. So we produce up to about 20 shows a season within this BFC New Gen space, and other shows as well.
And it sounds like you still manage to work with brands that are more niche and independent and creative, but has the culture of the fashion show overall, even in London with these really creative younger designers, changed? Is it a bit more formal and corporate than when you look back to the 90s, the early 2000s?
No, I think we absolutely encourage creativity in London. This is what we're known for. And I think this is what me and my team specialize in, bringing to life pure ideas. I suppose, like I said, there's more health and safety than there used to be. But our job is to find a way of creating those ideas, making them happen. And that can be unbelievable sets, that we literally have to throw people at to make sure that it can happen in the time frame. Because sometimes you've got a show that's maybe at 9, and then the next show in our shared space is potentially at 1 o'clock, and then you've got that tiny bit of time, even though we've been planning it for weeks with the designer and his art director. It's about making that happen. So to be honest, I think that creative-wise, London is exactly the same.
That's so nice to hear.
As it was in the 90s. And maybe that's why we don't get as much investment as we need, because we are not corporate here. And there just needs to be a kind of shift towards really respecting that kind of creativity that we produce.
Do people still try to sneak in, and do you encourage a bit of rule breaking?
Yeah, but security's tight. Security's tight. I mean, what I love is when people say, oh, you do London Fashion Week, where do I buy a ticket? And I go, no, you can't buy a ticket. It's totally invite only. And that actually does spin people out. They go, really? And years and years ago, I must tell you this actually, when I first started going to shows before I started producing them, of course, you weren't allowed to take a picture. It's very different from what it is now with everybody on their phones. I mean, I get so fed up when people don't clap in finale because they're on their phones. But when I first started going to shows, when I was a stylist, you weren't allowed to take a picture. The only thing that you could do was draw. So all the editors used to sit on the front row, drawing, which was amazing. The photography podiums were massive because there used to be over 100, 150 photographers, because that was the only imagery of that collection. And of course, that was withheld until the season.
Which is something very few brands still try to encourage, like the Row, I think in Paris is very strict about that. Would you like to see more people doing it and us going back into show spaces where phones aren't allowed?
I don't know. I think it's changed so much, and social media is so important now. I mean, I don't read newspapers anymore.
That's a big statement.
I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not interested.
Yeah.
I think social media is incredibly important. Yes, we don't know sometimes what's AI generated and what isn't. So I think I'm getting more and more adept at identifying what is, and I think other people are as well. But I just think, you can't go backwards on that. Let's just stay where we are. That's the way it is. And actually, it's what sells clothes, because yes, it's immediate, and yes, everybody sees everything, but it is all about the experience. When COVID happened, we all thought we were all going to go terribly digital. I thought that was the end of the world, and there weren't going to be any shows. But what's happened since COVID is the live experience. I'm wanting to be at that live experience. And the FOMO of not being at that live experience is enormous. It's bigger than it's ever been. And social media just records that.
That was Sarah Blonstein, founder of the events production company Blonstein. And now we turn to another key moment of the Fashion Week calendar, which was Michael Ryder's debut at Celine, which took place just between men's and couture fashion weeks in July in Paris. That was probably one of my favorite shows, maybe along with Mathieu Blazy's Chanel. Michael Ryder is the designer that I'm really looking to. And we had Moshe Lundstrom-Halbert, who is a journalist and a big online commentator, come and unpack the collection for us.
I really enjoyed listening to her analysis. She really took in all of the elements of the show and had some very specific, clear ideas about why it was that it was such a successful collection and one that everyone loved. You know, she was really kind of very precise about the things that, particularly around the styling, that made it so successful.
Yeah, I'm always thinking back to the point that she made about styling, and in particular about Brian Molloy, who is the stylist that works hand in hand with Michael Ryder, and how it's not just about the clothes, especially in that collection. It's about how they were put together, whether it was the blazer with a scarf wrapped around it, the rings stuck together. It can really make a difference. And I think stylists are often overlooked. Their role in making a collection happen, and whether it's a make or break sometimes, if getting the right stylist.
Absolutely. And just, I was looking at the pictures of the collection whilst listening to what Moshe had to say about it, and you could pinpoint all those things that she had noticed. And I think it's very reflective of real life. You know, how we wear our clothes reflects our personality, and we don't, even if you wore the exact same outfit as someone else, you're going to wear it in a slightly different way. And bringing that personality through on the runway, I think, is a really great selling point.
Great. Let's hear from Moshe Lundstrom-Halbert.
Sales have been down at Celine recently, so they needed this injection of desirability, because it had been a bit of a lull period with Eddie leaving, and I think people knew what to expect at Celine for a while. But I love looking into people's backgrounds and understanding where they've been in terms of where they are now. So if you look at Michael Ryder, for instance, I mean, he came from Polo Ralph Lauren, which he completely transformed, and I think you see it all around London, but even just the Polo ads and their art direction and their collateral, it's so much more fresh than it used to be. And that was really the Michael Ryder impact, because everyone loves this idea of classic wardrobe staples or seeing preppiness done right, where it's not obnoxious and it actually feels evocative and cool. And he knows how to do that. But then also he had worked with Phoebe Philo at Celine as well. So it's really that background. But then I saw in the collection, and I'd be interested to hear what you thought, considering that you were there, I could see a bit of the Michael Kors at Celine. Remember, Bernard Arnault brought him over in the 90s to make it a bit more commercial and bourgeois at the same time. And then I also saw the Eddie Slimane nods with the skinny pants again and some of the tailoring. And then the Phoebe Philo references seemed to me to be there too, with some of these scarf details and the dresses and the oversize and the emphasis on outerwear and the irreverence. And it seemed like he had all these different ideas, and then his stylist, Brian Molloy, brilliantly distilled it into looks that felt fresh and new, but still referential, which is really hard to do.
Definitely, and you're right, and I think that was quite intentional. He didn't want to erase history, which I think some designers have tried to do in the past, but I think this is much more respectful way when you're going into a house. And there were all the nods to Michael Kors, Eddie Slimane, Phoebe Philo, who he worked with, of course. So remixing all of that and paying homage to the people that came before you is, to me, is the best way to enter a house. And still, he found a way to make it feel fresh. I've never seen so many people smiling at a show.
Really?
There was so much excitement. It was almost electrifying. And if you think about it, it was cold. Some of us were outside.
It's a Sunday.
It's a Sunday. There was rain leaking through the scarf that they had put to cover the courtyard. But no one cared, because it was just a beautiful collection. And another thing that stood out to me, and I'd love to hear what you think, is that it felt like a shift in attitude and culture as well. Mm-hmm. You know, the way that they approached a debut show. The invitation was really discreet, a beautiful black and white scarf that wrapped around.
Did you get one of those?
I got.
What a keepsake.
Yeah, and I'm keeping it, and which is actually, again, very rarely happens. Fresh flowers sent to every guest.
Thoughtful.
Exactly. And there were, of course, some interesting names and celebrities on the front row, but I felt like I'm going into a spa. I mean, there's this calm music. Everyone was sat around chatting. It didn't feel overcrowded. There weren't paparazzi and photographers screaming outside. So it's this idea of intimacy as well. Do you think that this is the way forward for shows, even for the big luxury brands?
Well, it's interesting because it's quite different than what Eddie Slimane was doing, right? He was doing these shows that they weren't exactly warm. They felt more like concerts, and you didn't know exactly when they were going to happen. And some were staged to even feel like shows, but nobody was actually invited. And they would just capture the footage exactly how he liked. Whereas this one felt a little bit more real. And you never know until you're in the room. So it's fascinating to hear what you observe actually being there, because, I mean, we've both been to many shows where it was some of the designers' best work. It was spectacular, and people are just in a bad mood, or they just keep scowling the whole way through. Like, it doesn't cut through everything else that's going on and actually elicit a reaction. And I think for me, not being there, but witnessing it from afar, it almost felt to me like the front of book pages that Emmanuel Alt used to edit in French Vogue, where it was like an editorial. Like, I was taking all this inspiration, like, oh, a jazz shoe, white jazz shoe with a cute little sock. Oh, a scarf tied just so. Okay, we're going to layer the rings. Oh, we're going to wear 3 shades of blue all together. Oh, maybe I need to iron my jeans with a press right there in the front. Oh, a crooked collar. You know, there was all these references and inspirations that you could take, even if you are not a Celine client or it's completely without your budget. But I think that's very smart in today's day and age, to get an audience invested in your vision and where a house is going, where it doesn't feel so exclusive, and not even exclusive in terms of the price point, but also just in terms of the ideas. Like, I think a lot of the ideas there we could parse and we could recreate ourselves with pieces that already exist in our wardrobes, which is not something you see every day, especially we're not about to see it going into couture right now.
That was Moshe Lundstrom-Halbert, journalist and founder of online platform Newsflash. And finally, I wanted to finish on, okay, I've said it a few times, but I think this is my favorite conversation from this.
I think this is by far the best and most popular moment of Monocle on Fashion. And no, it's not the CEO, it's not a big creative director, it is Andrew Muller.
Andrew Muller, the foreign desk and the dailies, Andrew Muller, Monocle's contributing editor, who isn't perhaps the first person you think of as a Monocle voice on fashion, but he had some brilliant insights, I think, when he was talking to you and Grace Charlton, the associate fashion editor.
We've been talking about wanting to do an episode like that for a while, because Andrew is always joking that he knows nothing about fashion.
Just to paint a picture, when he comes into the office, his wardrobe staple is a Hawaiian shirt.
Yeah, and he does not know who Michael Ryder is, who Mathieu Blazy is. That's not his primary concern. He's reporting about foreign affairs and bigger things happening in the world.
Yeah, geopolitics is more his beat than fashion shows. But he came into the studio and really gave it his all, and I think gave some really, really astute analysis about the looks that have been on the runway this past spring summer.
And jokes aside, I think, you know, fashion commentators can sometimes take this a little bit too seriously. And even as someone who does work in fashion, I do think we need to remember that at the end of the day, it's some pretty dresses and it's lighthearted and we need to be having fun with it. So talking to Andrew drives that point home, and we had so much fun. And I think we need to commit now that we're bringing him back for fall-winter 2026.
Absolutely. I think the listeners will not have it any other way. So let's hear from Andrew Muller and Grace Charlton.
We've just had the most important historic fashion month. Mm-hmm. And there's, of course, a lot of critics that have their opinions, people online, people who are in the front row. But I thought you need to play fashion critic and tell us what you think, because it's quite refreshing. I think people exist within a fashion bubble and they know everyone's first name and have their informed opinions, but we want to hear something else. So Grace and I have handpicked very carefully a series of looks from the catwalks from Milan and Paris, all the big debuts.
Okay.
And we are going to do a little bit of show and tell.
So we're starting with Balenciaga by Pierpaolo Piccioli. For the listeners, it's a black sack dress with those big bug-like sunglasses.
See, I was going to say sack, but I kind of meant it as in a derisive sense, but that's actually what they were aiming for. I'm not sure she can see all that much, would be my concern with this. Is that an issue here if they thought about that? This looks a bit like an extremely upscale take on the kind of thing they put on horses to get them into the barriers when they don't want to go.
The blinkers.
Yes.
This is exactly what I was hoping for. Keep going.
The technical term. I, for one, would not wear this, but I also kind of doubt that anybody else is going to. I mean, did people like this?
I had mixed feelings. I mean, I would wear the dress. I love a sack dress, but maybe not the glasses. I think you're right on that one.
Or indeed, as we're calling them, the blinkers. Okay, what's next?
So moving on.
Yeah.
So this is Dario Vitale's first collection for Versace. Lots of 80s. He's going back to the founders' heyday. What do you think?
He does. Well, you say 1980s, and I was there at the time. He does look like the villain in an episode of Miami Vice.
Is that a good or a bad thing?
Well, I mean, I like bright colours. I do like bright colours. I'm not sure.
I can see you in this. You love a shirt.
I'm wearing one right now. What's he got around his neck? Is that some sort of ancient Egyptian amulet of some sort, or is it in fact? As I'm concerned, it's actually this is a mobile phone, isn't it?
It's not. It's not. It's a necklace.
Is it a necklace? I thought it was like a really fancy mobile phone on a really fancy mobile phone rope. And you just
gave Versace a new idea of what to do next season.
And the screen is facing in. I don't actually violently object to this. It's very high-waisted, it strikes me. Is that a thing people are doing now?
You know, they're dropping the waists, but clearly here, given the 80s inspiration, they went all the way.
I mean, I have mixed feelings. Actually, no, I don't have mixed feelings about the return of any kind of 80s fashion. My feelings are entirely unmixed. It was dreadful. But he is doing, at least he's not wearing a T-shirt under the suit jacket. I think we can be grateful for that. He is, however, slightly doing the 1980s rolling up the jacket sleeves thing, and it does look a little bit like he's about to strap on a guitar and play us some Mr. Mister. He must be stopped.
Okay, so I will take it as you're not a fan. Let's move on.
I've seen worse. Okay,
be nice here, Andrew. This is the finale look of the Chanel show. Big deal, new designer, new direction, and everyone in the audience, all the fashion people, fell head over heels.
Okay, and doing their bit for the environment by recycling bath mats, obviously. No, very, very colourful skirt she's got on here with, I mean, I'm not giving anyone prizes for the white T-shirt, but what is going on with the skirt here? I do actually quite like it.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Notwithstanding the whole recycled bath mats crack. It's bright and it's colourful. As before, I like bright colours. This went over quite well, did it? People like this?
Yeah. This is a
standing ovation. Everyone was thrilled. Everyone wants to go and buy the whole collection, and you like it too. So I think
that's obviously a winner. Okay.
Okay. Next, the final picture.
So this is the most divisive collection of them all. Jonathan Anderson's women's wear debut for Christian Dior. Some people absolutely loved it. Others hated it.
It makes all these female models look like they're the wrong shape.
Oh my gosh!
I mean, it does. Or was that the point?
Yeah, he's kind of known for that.
Okay.
Is that a good thing? Is it making you kind of curious? What is it?
Massively, I have to say. I think these people were probably all pretty much the right shape to start with, or is this what they are driving towards? Is a point being made here?
Well, our biggest critique, we were talking about it earlier, is that it didn't seem very practical as a collection.
Yeah, but I mean, have you ever been to a fashion show you couldn't say that about? I mean, even I understand that that's not really the point of your haute couture, is it?
Mm. Yeah, it felt more couture than just regular fashion.
But no, these are obviously impractical outfits. Those hats on a windy day, in particular.
Okay, so no Dior hat for you next season.
No, not this year.
Okay, so this was Spring Summer 26 Fashion Critic by Andrew Muller. Chanel was the winner.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'm happy with that, and they can put that on their posters.
That was Monocle's associate fashion editor Grace Charlton and contributing editor Andrew Muller. And that's it for today's show. We'll be back in the new year with more designer interviews and reports from the fashion industry. Today's episode was produced and edited by Lily Austin. I'm Natalie Theodosi. Thanks so much for listening, and we wish you a very happy new year.